Ukraine money is very much in doubt right now. Jim Jordan will bring you a little bit of what he had to say on the subject, but the White House is absolutely freaking out and losing their mind. President Biden making that clear in a press conference yesterday. Here's what he had to say.
Disarray on Capitol Hill after your conversation with allies yesterday worry you that you won't be able to deliver the aid that the U.S. has promised to Ukraine?
It does worry me, but I know there are a majority of members of the House and Senate in both parties who have said that they support funding Ukraine. With your, I'm going to be announcing very shortly a major speech I'm going to make on this issue and why it's critically important for the United States and our allies that we keep our commitment.
Mr. President, are you also concerned about the rest of your domestic and foreign policy initiatives being in peril because of what we saw happen yesterday, the dysfunction in Congress, the chaos that we saw on the House side? Does that concern you in any way?
The dysfunction always concerns me. The programs that we have argued over, we passed bipartisanly, I'm not concerned that they're going to all of a sudden come in and try to undo them, although there will be some. There will be some, I'm sure. There's half a dozen or more extreme MAGA Republicans who would like to eliminate just about everything I've done.
So Biden saying he's going to give a big speech on Ukraine. If I was a Ukraine person, by the way, I would not want that. I wouldn't want Biden, one of the most least popular presidents, to be the main cheerleader. But hey, go for it, I guess. I'm sure you'll convince us. The big thing whenever it comes to the speaker race is that Scalise and Jordan, none of them have made Ukraine a priority. In fact, Kevin McCarthy is the best friend that Ukraine had whenever it came to somebody who had any even semblance of credibility with both sides. Just to give you an idea, this is Jim Jordan straight from his mouth on what he would do whenever it comes to Ukraine. Let's take a listen.
What about Ukraine? Are you willing to move forward with an aid package for Ukraine if you're speaker?
I'm against that. What I understand is at some point we're going to have to deal with this appropriation process in the right way. And we're going to try to do that in the next, what are we down to, 41 days. The most pressing issue on Americans' mind is not Ukraine. It is the border situation, and it is crime on the streets.
The most pressing situation on Americans' mind is not Ukraine, Krystal. On that, he's 100% correct. The big question, though, is about where Steve Scalise has this. We actually polled some scores. There's a group here in Washington called Republicans for Ukraine. They're not really Republicans. They're like Bill Kristol Biden voters. But they've created a very useful score, at least for me, about where to judge where people are in terms of the votes on Ukraine. And this is according to their score sheet, what Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan have. Let's put it up there on the screen. So they have given Steve Scalise a, quote, B grade overall. That's based on his voting record. The voting record is that he voted aye on the Ukraine Lend-Lease Act, the original one, the Ukraine supplemental appropriation, the extra $50 billion back in 2022, but he voted no on 3 critical amendments which have extended more aid to Ukraine. He did ultimately support that $300 million to Ukraine with no statements currently on the record. They call him a B. Jordan, though, has been a no. He voted aye only on the initial $50 billion that was granted to Ukraine and no on basically every single vote since they give him an F. Obviously, Trump, I don't have to tell you where he stands on Ukraine. But I think that one of the important reasons why this matters for the entire Ukraine debate is it is more in peril today than it ever has been politically. Republicans, the vast majority of Republicans polling shows, do not support more aid to Ukraine. Now, that hasn't necessarily mattered whenever it comes to the votes, and McCarthy was stuck very much between a rock and a hard place. It was interesting, in his speech after he was defeated as speaker, he actually likened Putin to Hitler and was talking about bringing some stuff up in the past. So I think his personal loyalties absolutely lied with Ukraine. And Zelensky and others had made comments in the past that he had said privately, yeah, look, I support you, I'll figure out the votes. Well, that's not what Steve Scalise actually believes at all, at least in terms of the public record. Scalise himself, given his voting record, he did not vote aye on those 3 critical amendments in the past. While he may have supported the $300 million, is he going to support the $100 billion more that the Republicans in the Senate and the Democrats and Biden want to push through? With Jordan, it's actually a completely not, it's a known quantity. He's like, no, I'm totally against it. So, I mean, the idea that $100 billion more is going to Ukraine, I just simply, I can't believe a scenario where that would happen. I'll give the other side. chaos, as I have said, chaos is a ladder, in the words of the great Littlefinger. They could extract some, margin which would weaken the speakership, akin to the motion to vacate, and remove some of the barriers to what a discharge petition might look like. And so that would make it so that it would be possible to maybe get some Ukraine aid on the floor. But with both of these candidates, and it's not just me saying this, it's most congressional analysts that can look at it right now, even another dollar to Ukraine or even a transfer vote does not look likely anytime soon going through the House of Representatives. That will not, however, Krystal, stop the Senate from trying to get more money for Ukraine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Listen, I think, honestly, like I said before, I don't think their ideology really matters here. I don't think whether it was Kevin McCarthy or whether it is Steve Scalise or Jim Jordan, I don't think they were going to have the political strength and ability to bring a vote for Ukraine aid to the floor, at least if they want to keep their job as Speaker.
Yes.
I just don't think that you can, at this point, given where the Republican caucus is, and given how hardline, especially the dissident faction is on this particular issue, I mean, this was part of what led to the downfall of McCarthy. These allegations from Matt Gaetz that there was some sort of a secret deal with Democrats that he denied, but, Gaetz was pushing forward, but that's part of what led to McCarthy's downfall. I do not think whoever it is who ends up as Speaker of the House next can bring this vote to the floor. The only way it gets done, as far as I can see, is through some sort of legislative, parliamentary maneuver, a discharge petition, or some other thing, arcane maneuver that I'm unaware of. That's the only way I think that they are able to move it forward. You do still have, Biden is right, you do still have, if you had a vote in the House, it would still pass.
Well, I don't know how much. How much, though? Because that's the question. The only
because
time,
you would have, Republicans only have a 3-vote margin.
Right.
So if all of the Democrats are voting for it, you only need three Republicans to get it across the finish line. So I think it's very clear there's a pretty large majority in the House, honestly.
You're right. I meant in terms of what he said, the majority of both parties. I guess, you're right, because rhetorically what he said is that a majority of each chamber in the Congress does support it. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, so
I thought he was talking about the majority of Republicans because I'd flagged previously that the majority of Republicans, it's actually completely 50-50.
I think Republicans are pretty split at this point in terms of pretty split down the middle in terms of the caucus, although it's not 100% clear. But yeah, if you had a straight up and down vote in the House, it would pass. But it's a question of getting to that vote. And like I said, I don't think there's any way in hell anybody who wants to remain Speaker of the House can bring that vote. I will say I differ from you a little bit on the Biden speech in that, listen, he owes it at this point to the American people to explain what the hell he's thinking about this conflict.
I agree with you. I meant in terms of if you want aid to continue to have somewhat of a bipartisan majority, I'm like, yeah, good luck. Give it to the unpopular president. On a Democratic level, I agree.
I mean, I don't think he's going to persuade or dissuade a single person with whatever he says. But I do think he really owes it to everyone, the world, the American people at this point, to explain what the hell the plan is. And because, the plan had previously been, we're going to be all in through the counteroffensive, they're going to take back territory, and then they'll be in a stronger position, and then maybe we can think about how to end this conflict. Well, that did not work out. So what now? That's what I want to hear from the President of the United States, and that's what I think he owes people.
Krystal, they don't have a plan. He can try and gaslight us all he wants.
He'll say something.
Biden gave us the plan already. It's called regime change in Moscow.
Presidential words matter. But that's the thing. Presidential words matter.
Yeah.
So if he says something like that, that's important. Whatever sort of line he tries to pull, it's important to hear at least how he is explaining what his view of the conflict is. So I welcome this address. I hope it's fulsome. I'm certainly going to, listen very carefully to the words coming out of his mouth versus what the actions are that they're taking.
I have no disagreement. I welcome the speech as well. I think he should have been giving us speeches probably on a quarterly basis as to why we're massively funding this, as to what the goals are, as to what all of that is. That said, I mean, he's basically told us nothing for Ukraine without Ukraine, which means this government, which is wholly reliant upon us for basically everything, gets to set the terms. That's not a plan, actually. The second plan is, in terms of the red lines, first F-16s was going to start World War III. There's actually a good side-by-side analysis. Every single thing that he has said that he eventually reversed on. He reversed himself on F-16s. He reversed himself on Abrams tanks. He reversed himself on, even he pledged at one point no NATO troops would be sent to the country. Now the UK is talking about sending actual boots on the ground to Ukraine. I mean, at every step of what he has said that he wouldn't do and what were alleged red lines, he eventually flipped. The only thing thing hasn't flipped on yet is a no-fly zone, which I wouldn't put off the table given what this administration is and how obsessed they are with Ukraine. So I agree with you. From a democratic perspective, I agree completely. From a global perspective and from a interest of the peace of the world, I agree. That said, I don't expect to hear anything new. I think his plan is very simple. You just back Ukraine for as long, quote unquote, as long as it takes. And it's funny too, I've seen a bunch of people say things like, oh, Biden gave his word to Ukraine, so how can the U.S. Congress go back on his word? I'm like, hey, you know what? In our system, the president is not a king.
That's
right. The
right.
president does not decide. And if we really want to think that statements of presidents are, official declarations of American policy, as by the way the Russians and the Chinese do, there are a whole lot of statements in the past that clash very much with even allowing or trying to get Ukraine into NATO. The reason why you can disregard those is in our system, the Senate of the United States ratifies all treaties, and that is what our word actually looks like. The House of Representatives, per our Constitution, is the one that actually appropriates these bills. So he shouldn't be talking out of his ass if he can, and promising stuff that he can't necessarily, not even he can't deliver, that the United States through our democratic system actually can. So look, on a personal level, obviously, I support this. I don't think Ukraine should get a single dollar more from the United States. And I think that we should be pursuing all avenues towards peace. I think that us giving them this blank check has been a disaster for American foreign policy interests, has been a complete distraction. It's depleted all of our weapon stockpiles. We've given them over $100 billion in aid, more than we gave to the Afghan National Security Forces through all of 20 years. We've done plenty. If the Euros want to pick up the tab, go for it. But you know what? They don't actually have the capacity, even if they wanted to. So the plan, this is going to happen now, or it can happen 5 years from now. And there's no reason to waste a couple $100 billion. In the meantime, keep our eye off the ball of where our actual threats are. And frankly, just make our own country less safe. But obviously my view is a very standard and at this point for people who watch this show.
I mean, listen, in my opinion, all of this Matt Gaetz chaos situation has worked out beautifully.
Me too. Yeah, that's
we
the funny thing.
avoided a government shutdown.
Yeah.
There was no none of the wild
social spending cuts
to social spending that he was advocating for, and that that initial appropriations bill that McCarthy tried to pass that they rejected, even though it had draconian cuts to every social safety net program. So that didn't happen. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy that, Ukraine aid is being stymied here, and that at least there's going to be a big debate over whether we move forward on that. I'm happy with that. And I'm personally happy to see the Republican Party torn to shreds and look like chaotic morons that can't do anything.
Let's get to that.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.